What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Engage 8 podcast. I'm your host, Zach, with my two co hosts, Josh and Mike. Before we get started, I want to ask you guys to like and subscribe to the channel. We have our socials in the description down below, as well as our Spotify and TikToks as well for different forms of content if that kind of floats your boat. With that out of the way, today we're going to be getting into some head coaching and maybe a little bit of offensive coordinator hires from the past week or so. We're going to recap the divisional round, and then we're going to preview two of the final three games of the NFL season. It's a sad time, but all good things must come to an end. But Mike, you want to get us started with some head coaching hires?
Yeah, I'll start with some coaching carousel. We already talked about Gerard Mayo to the Patriots. The first big one was off the table was Antonio Pierce to the Raiders. He's done a great job getting a connection with all of the players, especially the superstars. Devontae Adams seems to love him. Max Crosby really loves him. Said he would consider leaving if they decided to not bring him back. He's done a great job letting the players lead the team, developing a good culture in his short time as their interim head coach. And now he has a chance to hire his own coaching staff with all these talented pieces on the offensive side of the ball and Max Crosby on defense. So we'll see what he does. The quarterback position is still a question mark with Aiden O'Connell, so we'll see how he does there.
Yeah, I loved AP. That was definitely one of the coaching hires that I am most excited about. There's a lot of these coaching hires that have been pretty underwhelming for me overall, especially with all the big names out there. But we'll get to a few more later. I have a lot of respect for AP and this defense, especially how they fully bought in the second half of the year. They're one of the better defenses in the entire NFL in the second half of the year. And I think they finally got a guy that's a great culture guy in there. Gruden was a great coach, but there was ups and downs with him. Basaccia, they should have hired him when they could have after that season. They didn't. And McDaniels is the opposite of a good culture guy. So I'm happy they have a good guy in there. We obviously for some reason do not know coaching uh figures numbers wise for these hires, which is something that I hope one day we're allowed to be in on how much these guys are getting paid. But I
A
assume
lot.
Mark Davis saved a little bit of bread with this one instead of trying to go make a splash. But I love this hire, one of my favorites.
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. They probably didn't want to spend too much money because they are still paying John Gruden, if I'm not mistaken, because of that big 10-year, $100 million contract from a couple of years ago. But I also love this hiring. Josh, you said it, the magic word, culture. Players like Devontae Adams, Max Crosby, when those superstars on your team are just asking for a guy to be hired, especially from within, saves you a lot of just extra groundwork you got to do. And it's honestly the right decision. Listening to your players on your team and following what they do is the right thing, like 95% of the time. Those of you who know, you know. The other 5% maybe relates to my Bears, but we can get to that later. I'd like to hire. I've been talking about it since he kind of took over, and those players have been voicing their opinions publicly. I think it's a great hire, and I think they can really build something special.
Yeah, next hire we got here, Brian Callahan was the Bengals offensive coordinator. The Tennessee Titans have hired him as their next head coach. Interesting move. It was an interesting move to fire Mike Vrabel in the first place. He's a proven offensive coordinator. He gets a chance to lead his own franchise, continue to develop Will Levis, who has been showing some promise early in his career. It just seems like the Titans love the guys that the Colts decide to pass on. Colts passed on Will Levis. Titans go out and draft Will Levis right after that. Colts were really looking at Callahan, and now the Titans come and scoop him 1 year later. Both these guys have the Manning family seal of recommendation. So we'll see how this goes for Tennessee.
Yep, this is one of the ones I don't care about, to be honest. It's not a big splash of a hire at all. Um, it's hard to evaluate an offensive coordinator who has talent such as Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins on his offense. It's hard to develop a unsuccessful scheme with those guys on your team. So we'll see how he does in Tennessee. I think this is one of those that it's hard to judge now. We could judge this one a year or 2 years from now.
I completely agree. He's he doesn't have the biggest resume going as a head coach. We got to figure out if he's really a leader of men, if he can command that locker room to a level that Vrabel honestly did, because he's a big guy. He commands respect wherever he goes,
Physically.
and a little bit. But I am very interested to see how this affects Will Levis's development. Obviously, he was working with guys like you mentioned, Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. Tennessee doesn't have that. Maybe Will Levis can turn it into a Walmart Joe Burrow, maybe, but they're also going to be probably losing Derrick Henry in the offseason. So it'll be interesting to see where they go with this, but it wouldn't shock me to see him as just like a bridge hire to their next guy once they try to sneak into their contending window in like 2 or maybe 3 years.
Yeah, next hire is one that is a splash hire. Jim Harbaugh to the Los Angeles Chargers. He leaves Michigan, where he had spent the last 9 years. He leaves without taking any responsibility of the cheating that occurred in the last 3-ish years. Kind of a cowardice move. He's going to leave that team in some struggles, but it's a great hire for the Chargers. He's a smart coach, very smart coach, good offensive mind. He can develop a culture. This team will not be ran over like we saw with Staley, where the team just didn't show up to games. They will show up every week. They are in terrible cap space, 35 million over the cap limit. They're going to have a lot of cuts to make. I expect them to draft some offensive weapons coming out of the draft this year. They're going to, I don't even think they have a running back really on their roster right now. So I think they're going to look at running back. Maybe Blake Corum reunites with Harbaugh in the NFL. That'll be interesting. But Harbaugh will bring a great staff. He's a great coach. So good move for the Chargers to help Justin Herbert.
Yeah, I don't think Michigan fans can be mad. He literally did whatever he could, in or outside of the rules, to get his team to win a national championship. So I don't think they can be too upset about him just getting up and leaving. But for the Chargers, I think this is exactly what you needed after Staley. You have so much talent, and year after year, with all that talent, the players fail to show up and produce wins during these games. Like you said, Harbaugh is not going to have a hard time getting his team to go show up for games. I think he's going to get the most out of the talent that he has that he possibly can, which is a lot of talent on both the offensive and defensive end. I think this team's going to be very dangerous in the coming years.
I 100% agree. One thing I've been tweeting about, talking about for a little bit concerning Jim Harbaugh and the fact that he might come to the NFL. He is now, and I'm very curious to see who he's going to bring on as his staff, his OC, his DC. You said it, Mike. He's a really smart offensive mind. I'm excited to see how Justin Herbert kind of develops a little bit more under him. Hopefully, he becomes a winner. Harbaugh, he just wins wherever he goes. He's coming off the national championship at Michigan. When he was in the NFL with the 49ers, he made the playoffs, I believe, 3 out of the 4 years, and the conference championship 2 out of those years. And one of them, he made a Super Bowl and almost beat his brother. So this is definitely a win now move for the Chargers. They've got some salary cap issues to figure out, but I don't doubt that they're going to get that sorted out. They're going to build around Herbert, maybe a little bit of Keenan Allen after the really great year he just had. But I'm also really intrigued to see where Kellen Moore goes. I believe that Bears actually requested an interview for him as OC before they hired Jim Harbaugh, and the Chargers blocked it. But I think it was today or yesterday that he got asked to interview somewhere, and they just allowed it. So I'm interested to see if he's going to maybe get a head coaching gig somewhere, or if he's just going to slide laterally to an OC position. But I guess we'll see.
It does look like Kellen
Yeah.
Moore is going to be out in LA, it seems.
Gotcha.
Which is interesting that they would deny that interview. I saw that too. I don't understand that really. But next head coaching job, not as big. Raheem Morris to the Falcons. I think he'll do a great job coaching this defense. We saw it in LA. That defense isn't as talented as this Falcons defense is, and he did a great job with them. He's already coached in Atlanta before. He was an assistant head coach, pass game coordinator, wide receivers coach from 2015 to 29, and the defensive coordinator in 2020. He's very familiar with this team. When they fired Dan Quinn in 2020, he took over. He was the interim head coach and went 4-7. So he knows Atlanta. I think he'll be great for the culture. He knows what the team is like. The defense will be very good for seasons to come. I just don't know what they're going to do on the offensive side of the ball. He has experience there, but it'll be interesting to see what they do with a coaching staff. So nice hire, but they're going to have question marks at quarterback. A lot of talent. We'll see what they'll do.
Yeah, the biggest thing in this hire for me is the fact that Bill Belichick will not be having a head coaching job next year, it looks like, barring a shocking situation in Seattle or Washington. But yeah, Raheem Morris is a solid hire, I guess. He did coach in the South before, as he was, like you said, the interim coach in Atlanta, and he was the head coach in Tampa Bay for a little bit. Unsuccessful there, but yeah, I think it's a fine hire for them. You got a lot of talent on offense and defense, but at the end of the day, you still don't have a quarterback. So until they get that situation figured out, it's still going to be a mystery in Atlanta.
Yeah, I think obviously the lead candidate for quarterback is probably Justin Fields. Just pairing head coach and a fourth year quarterback kind of makes a little bit of sense. You get the right OC, let Fields learn a different system and just use all those weapons that they have. Or they just use pick 8 on, I don't know, like, or they trade back or something.
They have
But pick
8.
8 is going to be, yeah, Atlanta. Yeah, they got pick 8.
Damn, I thought they were farther back than that for some reason.
Now they got pick 8, and
Solid pick.
I mean, depending on what they're thinking, maybe Raheem Morris is going to go want to get an edge rusher, solidify that spot in his defense. Go Dallas Turner. I know I've been keeping my eye on him for the Bears, but they've got the weapons on offense. That's always been my question mark about the Falcons. Yeah, their defense has been solid the last little while, especially this year in the red zone. They were pretty good, but the offense has just been so inconsistent. Mostly the quarterback. Maybe it was a little bit of Arthur Smith hating fantasy football. I don't know, but I think in order for them to have success, they got to get the offensive side of the ball figured out. I'm not too worried about defense for them.
Yeah, and on to our last coaching job. This happened today. Dave Canales to the Panthers. Very good move for the Panthers, in my opinion. We've seen in the last 2 years specifically him take a quarterback that has struggled to perform in recent times and do a great job with them. Geno Smith in Seattle, he was their pass game coordinator, and this year in Tampa Bay with Baker Mayfield, really helped turn around his career and have one of his best seasons of his career. He did a phenomenal job with that offense as a whole. He got the ball to Mike Evans a lot. He got Chris Godwin involved. Rashad White really had a breakout season. The issue with this job is he does have David Tepper as his GM, which is not good for a coach at all. So that puts him in a rough position. But I think he has a chance to really turn around Bryce Young and maybe start tapping into some of that potential that we saw and the reason why he was the first overall pick.
Yeah, this is the worst job in the NFL with Tepper. It's probably one of the worst jobs in pro sports right now. There was a lot of guys I'm sure they wanted over Canales that were not going to accept that job. I don't think Ben Johnson was going to accept that job. I don't think many of the top prospects were going to. But Canales did a great job this year. I think it's a solid hire for them. See what he could do with Bryce Young. He got the most out of Baker Mayfield this year. He hopefully should get the most out of Bryce Young next year.
Yeah, he's getting to Bryce Young a lot earlier than he did to Geno Smith or Baker Mayfield. Certainly in the middle of their careers right now. So getting to Bryce Young early is going to be huge for him. Like you said, Mike, hopefully dipping into that untapped potential that he has yet to show as an NFL quarterback. He showed a lot of potential in college, but obviously the situation around him, like you said, Josh, probably one of the worst in sports. So this will definitely be very interesting if they decide to pair those two for the long haul or they just view him as a bridge coach. But I definitely think it's a good hire. It's just not having your first round pick this year, a lot of roster turnover. It's going to be very interesting to see how the next few years play out for the Panthers.
Yeah, and they also hired Dan Morgan as their new GM. He had played for the Panthers, so he is tasked with building a roster around Bryce Young and that uh, rough weapons that he currently. Like you mentioned, Josh, the two jobs that are still up for grabs, the Washington Commanders, which it seems like Ben Johnson's the runaway favorite, and then the Seahawks, which Dan Quinn has been heavily linked to, but that one has still a lot of question marks. And then the main storylines, like you guys said, neither Bill Belichick got a job so far. Mike Vrabel and Bobby Slowick, which are three head coaches that I was going into this cycle almost certain that all of them would get a job.
Yep. Very interesting. I already touched on Belichick a little bit. Maybe he goes and takes over a defensive coordinator spot somewhere, maybe in Dallas if Quinn ends up getting the Seattle job. That's a possibility. I know him and Jerry Jones have a good relationship, so they could probably go there. Who else did you? Slowick. We have no idea what's going to happen with Slowick. That's a mystery so far. And Vrabes, I don't know how many connect or what connections he has of where he can go to be a DC at. I know Dan Campbell likes him. Lions DC position most likely is not going to be open unless Aaron Glenn somehow gets that Seahawks or Commanders job, which I don't think is going to happen. But yeah, he could end up maybe as a position coach somewhere for a year or so to get back on his feet. But I assume at some point he'll have a high level coaching job.
I don't know what it is, but I think Seattle would make the most sense for either Belichick or Vrabel. Neither are super flashy, just out in public media guys. So I never expected either of them to go to like the Chargers or anything because that's so much like camera time. That just doesn't seem like Belichick. Rainy Seattle, just dark and gloomy. That feels like Belichick to me. So if Belichick were to get a head coaching job, My gut says it would be Seattle if he were to get one, but it also wouldn't shock me to see him take a year or two off the sport and just maybe pull a Sean Payton a little bit and just gather his thoughts and then go somewhere in a year or two and fix them up. But speaking of Seattle, when Pete Carroll went out, they decided to let all their coordinators kind of just look for other jobs, and they weren't going to block anything. And their offensive coordinator, Shane Waldron, a guy that I was hoping for the Bears to hire as head coach if they canned Flus, they ended up keeping Flus. They were looking around for OCs, and one of my top candidates, Shane Waldron, officially the OC of the Bears. I could not be happier about it. He helped turn around Geno Smith, who's got a relatively limited toolbox of just abilities within his arsenal. He was a backup quarterback for a reason. He's turned into a very solid top 15 guy. And with the good amount of weapons that they've had in Seattle, he's put out borderline top 15, borderline top 10 offenses the last couple years. Having a guy like DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, running back like K9, rookie receiver like JSN. I love seeing him get them involved. I have a lot more tape to go through to really see all of the nuances of his offense, but I'm very excited for it. And I love that they're dipping into the Shanahan and McVay tree. I think that's really smart. I'm very interested to see who they bring in as the quarterback coach as well, to see maybe that'll give us a slight hint at what they're thinking with doing with pick number 1, whether it's Caleb or they trade it and then they stick with Justin. I have my preferences, but I think drafting Caleb is a great situation. Keeping Fields is a good situation, but regardless, I'm very glad that we got an innovative offensive mind, and anything is better than that terrorist Luke Getsy.
All I got to say about the Bears, I don't know much to say about Waldron, but if they don't take Caleb Williams, that is a massive, massive, massive mistake. If they do, I think the NFC North is the best division in football next year.
That's
Packers on
tough
the way
one.
up. Vikings will get healthy.
It's hard to
Lions are in the NFC
Wait till the AFC South
A-
comes.
it's hard to argue against the AFC North considering they were the only team with everybody above 500 this year. But yeah, I could see the Bears, Vikings, Packers, Lions just being a juggernaut of a division next year if all teams play their cards right, of course.
Yeah, there's a couple divisions. AFC South is on the up and coming. I don't think it'll be in the battle for a top division, but a lot of young quarterbacks there. I still think the AFC North is the best. Um, Two last little notes. Bill Vinovich to referee the Super Bowl. He has had some controversy in his career. Gets a chance. I think he's done it before, but to referee the Super Bowl. And then Vic Fangio has parted ways with the Dolphins. He's no longer their DC. And Javon Holland was very happy as he posted on his Instagram story him kicking rocks. So
Yeah,
I
that
did
was
not see that.
that
That's actually
that
funny.
was funny. But yeah, Vic Fangio's one of the top regarded DCs in the league. I think he'll do a good job in Philly.
I mean, if he goes Philly's the favorite, but
I
I
thought it
think he's
was
going.
I thought it was damn near set in stone.
it's damn near set in stone, but nothing's guaranteed in this world except for death
Anything's
and
better than Matt
taxes.
Patricia, though.
Oh, that,
Literally
duh.
anything.
Who's looking for a
I
job?
could probably call a
Anybody
better
on
game
the
than
planet.
Patricia. But what scheme do the Eagles run? Are they a 4-3 or a 3-4? Because I know Fangio is 3-4, and that's kind of what most defenses are doing now. So,
I don't know what Fat Matt was running.
well,
No one. He doesn't even know what he was running.
He doesn't.
he
He's
just
just
said,
an
"Hey, you
absolute
get out
clown.
there. We'll just see what you do." But
Yeah,
yeah,
if any NFC North teams outside of the Lions, Matt Patricia is a free agent. I highly recommend going with him. He's a leader of men. He always has a pencil on him if anybody needs to write anything, so he's very useful in that regard. So if any Bears, Packers, well, Barry got fired,
Vikings.
right?
Joe Barry did get fired a couple days
Hey,
ago.
Packers. He knows a lot about the Lions.
Considering they just had Joe Barry, I think that's the only legitimate downgrade that you could
Yeah.
make as a defensive coordinator.
Yeah. But you guys ready to move on into the divisional round recap here?
Yeah.
All right, we will start with the first game. Ravens 34, Texans 10. The Texans were just outmatched here talent-wise in this game. Texans' only touchdown was a punt return touchdown in the first half. They didn't have a single offensive touchdown. For a super electric offense with CJ Stroud that was getting a lot of hype after that game with the Browns where they dominated their defense. Really had a letdown game here in Baltimore. Lamar had his first good playoff game in one of the biggest spots for him. 250 total yards, 4 total touchdowns, 0 turnovers. He was fantastic to say the least, and is leading his team as great as he has in his entire career. This is his best season. Maybe statistically not. This is definitely his best season. We've been waiting to see if Lamar could prove himself in the playoffs, and he finally has. If Lamar played poorly in this game and the Texans won, there would be a lot of people making comments about Lamar, how he's not one of the best quarterbacks in the league, regardless of MVP. MVP matters, but if you go and let playoff stinkers happen every single time you get in the playoffs, then MVPs don't matter at all. Look at Embiid in the NBA. Um, I said the Texans needed to run the ball well to win this game. They couldn't run the ball well at all. They had nothing in the run game, forcing CJ Stroud to pass, and this Ravens defense has just been nasty most of the season. Neither team turned the ball over in this game. It was a pretty clean game overall. Just it came down to the Texans just couldn't move the ball, especially in the second half. They just had many 3-and-outs, turnover on downs, sub 5 play drives. They just couldn't move the ball in the Ravens. It was a rowdy environment. Fairbairn did miss a kick. He's been one of the better kickers in the league this year, but Baltimore's one of the tougher places to kick in general, which just makes Justin Tucker all that more impressive. The Ravens did what they needed to do. They defended home field, and now they go to play Patrick Mahomes next week.
Yeah, this is more of a showing on the talent disparity between the Ravens and Texans. The Texans, yeah, it was cute. They demolished Cleveland. They got a couple defensive touchdowns. They were riding high at home. They're playing a lot ahead of schedule compared to what we thought they were going to be this year. But they won their whole playoff game. Great for them. But the Ravens, they just said, "All right, pipe down, little bro. We'll take it from here." Lamar, MVP type of game in an MVP type of season. His first probably legitimate MVP playoff performance in his entire career, like you mentioned, Josh. He's been a little underwhelming to this point, and if he plays like this against Kansas City, it's going to be hard to pick against them. Baltimore, they just have a lot of playmakers on offense. They might be getting Mark Andrews back next week, and the fact that they just absolutely dismantled this Texans team, this is going to be, this is definitely going to be what's the word I'm looking for? Oh man, not foresight. Jeez, I can't think of it. I'm blanking right now. This is foreshadowing.
Anticipating.
This is foreshadowing what we'll see from Baltimore probably the rest of the playoffs if they face inferior rosters to them, which I think there's maybe one left, but they are quarterbacked by one of the greatest of all time, in my opinion, in Patrick Mahomes, and they see them next round. So I'm very much looking forward to the next round.
Yeah, this was a good first half game, 10-10 at halftime. But Lamar Jackson in the end was able to silence a lot of playoff doubters, pass for 2 touchdowns, ran for 2 touchdowns. It was only his second playoff win in 5 games. He's now 2-3, but he really played very good in this one and is one of the main reasons the Ravens won, obviously. He's the first quarterback since at least 1948 in the regular season or the playoffs with at least 2 touchdown passes, 2 touchdown runs, 100 yards rushing, and a 100 passer rating in the same game. He was phenomenal. He had only had one game this season with 100 rushing yards, and he had that in his first playoff game this season on only 11 rushing attempts. He faced a career high blitz rate. D'Amico Ryans wanted to blitz him, and he did 75% of the time. And he was able to go 13 of 18 for 120 yards, 2 touchdowns. He got rid of the ball at an average of 2.25 in the second half when they really started to pull away. He was playing phenomenal. The run game absolutely bullied the Texans defense, 229 rushing yards to only 38 for the Texans. And they were able to pull away in the second half. Their defense was also phenomenal. No Marlon Humphrey. That really didn't matter. They held the Texans to no offensive touchdowns. CJ Stroud didn't get sacked one time this game, which is something the Ravens have to do next week against Mahomes. They have to be able to sack him. But the Texans lose the game. They're now 0-5 in the divisional round of the playoffs. They're the only current franchise that has never reached a conference championship game, which is a rough stat. City of Baltimore will host the AFC Championship for the first time since January of 1971, and that team was the Baltimore Colts.
Yep. Moving on here, Packers and Niners. Niners 24, Packers 21. The Packers absolutely should have won this game. They played better for all but a few minutes of this game against the Niners. Jordan Love throws 2 picks. Both the picks were completely his fault. 2 bad reads by him, especially that one late. They had plenty of time on the clock to go win this game, and they couldn't do it. The Packers were able to shut down San Francisco's run game for most of this one. San Francisco had a few chunk plays in this one, especially towards the end. Excuse me. Um, and Christian McCaffrey broke a few runs there at the end, and they relied on him heavily in that last drive to go score the touchdown to win the game. So it showed me a couple things in this one. It showed me that the Niners are a beatable team. It showed me that you can sometimes run the ball on the Niners. You can sometimes stop the Niners' run game. This was a moment where it was going to be like, okay, are the Packers going to be able to run on the strong run defense? Are they going to be able to stop this strong run offense? They were able to do both. They were very, very impressive in their run defense. Aaron Jones was great again against this Niners team and their strong front. Chase Young, as much talent as he has actually not been that good in his time here at the Niners, especially in the run game. He's pretty poor in the run game overall. I think that's a heavy weakness of this team. The Packers, like I said, had every chance to win this game on that last drive. The Niners left plenty of time on the clock for him to go at least go tie, and he makes a bad read late and throws a pick. But like I said earlier, with the NFC North being one of the best divisions in football next year, the Packers' future is really bright. I think they're going to be a very good team next year as all their young receivers get older. I'm sure they're going to pick up some guys in free agency. Love's going to have another year under his belt of experience. And overall, if the Niners can't run the ball and they don't have Deebo Samuel, they're in trouble. We saw when they didn't have Deebo Samuel earlier this year, they looked very beatable when they lost 3 in a row. He comes back and they look like themselves again. Hopefully for them, he can come back and play in these this final game or final 2 games, depending on how it goes this week. But yeah, the Packers had every chance to win this game. They should be in the NFC title game, but that's the playoffs for you.
Yeah, you said it yourself. It was Packers probably should have won this game. They were the better team for roughly 3.5 quarters of this one. Purdy was doing just enough in the early parts of this game to just keep the Niners within reach. He made a couple really nice throws, one of which was that touchdown to George Kittle. And I think he had a couple to Jawan Jennings as well over the middle. And it was just Jawan Jennings was having himself a game, it felt like. But the big play was Christian McCaffrey breaking a run. I think that put them ahead, and then he ended up getting another touchdown later. But Jordan Love, like you said, Josh, that back breaking interception, just rolling right, throwing back left, thought he had something, but Dre Greenlaw just came across, picked it off, and ran around a little bit. At first, I was like, "Oh, you should probably go down here," but apparently he was going for 6 because he promised Fred Warner or something. But I don't know.
That would have
This
been
game,
hilarious if he fumbled.
it was.
No way
It,
he
it
admits
really
that
would have
after the
been.
game if he fumbles. No
No,
chance.
not at all. That would have been wild. But I will say this about Jordan Love. He looked pretty good for a majority of the game. They were picking on the corner opposite of Travarius Ward for a majority of the game. His two of his 3 big missed throws were those interceptions. I believe the first one was a dump off to Aaron Jones. He just missed high and behind him. Aaron Jones just tried to reach him back and tipped it. I don't know if it was Aaron Jones, but the receiver reached high and behind him, try and tip it, went up in the air, picked off. And then the last one, just completely unnecessary, tried forcing something that did not need to be there. And that's sometimes what happens when you have a quarterback with limited experience in the league, especially in the playoffs. He played well last week, but things kind of pressure kind of caved in a little bit and he just couldn't handle it. But it was his first year starting. I'm willing to give him a little bit of grace on that. They made it further than probably a good amount of the fan bases in the league expected them to go. So that just shows that Jordan Love, he's ahead of schedule, especially for a first year starter. And Matt LaFleur, he's a heck of a coach. He was able to get a lot out of these guys, especially that really young receiving core. The Packers have a unfortunately bright future. And I say unfortunately because you and me, Josh, NFC North fans, I don't think we want to continue to see these guys twice a year, possibly 3 if they match up in the playoffs, because it's really hard to beat the same team 3 times in a year. Unfortunately, the Bears just got to focus on beating them once. So, but the Niners, they got it done when it mattered. Purdy, it was like this in, I don't remember what week it was, but when they played the Browns, Purdy was rough a majority of the game. But on that final drive, when he had to go down, get them into field goal range, he did his job, made a beautiful throw to Ayuk, and ended up getting them into field goal range. Moody just missed the kick. So that really had no impact on this game whatsoever, but it's just similar situations that I like to look back on. And yeah, the Lions are going to have their hands full with Christian McCaffrey and that loaded receiving group with Debo if he plays, Ayuk, Kittle, and CMC if he lines up in the slot every once in a while. So this will be a great, great championship weekend, in my opinion.
49ers, they advanced to the third straight NFC championship. Very impressive. Brock Purdy, he struggled in this game. Maybe with some of the rust that we had talked about. He had about 20 days off or whatever, 3 weeks since he had played last. But when it mattered most, he did show up in the game, 6 for 7, 47 yards on the game-winning drive. Had a big third down conversion to Brandon Ayuk, 252 yards total and a touchdown. So a solid day, but the way he'd been playing in the regular season and this offense, he still should have been better. CMC really saved the day for him. Touchdown with 1 minute and 7 left. He had the big touchdown earlier in the game, 98 yards on 17 carries. Defensively, Dre Greenlaw, 2 interceptions from Jordan Love. Their defense played well enough to find a way to win the game. Jordan Love looked very good in this game, in my opinion. Hostile environment for the second week in a row. Had some costly turnovers on some throws that, yeah, they maybe weren't there, but he's just young. You watch some of the throws he hit earlier in the game. His arm just was able to get the ball there. I understand how he thought he could make that throw too. Uh, their main issue that had been killing them all season that they decided to just kind of bat an eye and just avoid it was Anders Carlson. He had missed a lot of kicks. It feels like every time you watch him, you see him miss one. It feels like the kick ended up costing them huge in this game. It feels like every time he would kick, I would say to like whoever I'm around that I bet you he misses his kick. That happened in this game. I called it that he missed it. I don't want to sound like LeBron, but I did call that he was going to miss this kick. It was just scripted that he would miss this kick. Those 3 points killed them. They lose by 3 points. But that wasn't the Packers' only issue. First half, they got to the red zone on 3 straight drives to start the game and were unable to get a touchdown. Scored 2 field goals and got stuck on a 4th and 1 on a sneak. You got to be able to finish in the red zone, especially in the playoffs against a team as good as the 49ers. They became the first team in 20 years to reach the red zone on their first 3 drives of a playoff game without getting a touchdown. So they're just unable to get over that 49ers hump. But this season was better than what they expected at all. For the 49ers, this is what you expected. You're in the conference championship at home with a chance to go to the Super Bowl. And the last thing I got to say is this is looking at you, Zach, specifically, and Bears fans as a whole. It's embarrassing how every year they admittedly celebrate this like it's their Super Bowl, the Packers losing in the playoffs. It's one of the worst things to happen every year, in my opinion. I
I've
can't
got more
stand
Super
it.
Bowls than you'll ever see in your life.
I don't get it, but um,
Packers losing the playoffs a lot. That's what it
oh,
is.
well, it's just embarrassing. The Bears don't play in meaningful football games almost every year. Uh, they haven't been in the playoffs in a while. The Packers were the youngest team in the NFL. They went on to win a playoff game. They found their franchise QB. They were able to develop him. Um, and Bears fans can't say any of that. So it's embarrassing for Bears fans, Connor Burns specifically.
Lions 31, Buccaneers 23.
Lions
Uh,
win again.
the Lions won again.
Oh, they
The
do
li
fucking win.
the Lions were tested and they passed those tests with flying colors. Mike Evans did his thing as the wide receiver ones have against the Lions recently. I know it's a big story in the news. Everyone wants to talk about how these wide receiver ones are just torching the Lions, and they are. But the stretch that everyone's talking about is Justin Jefferson twice, CeeDee Lamb once, Puka Nacua once, Mike Evans once. These are all fantastic wide receivers. What?
DJ Moore.
Did he dominate them twice?
Yeah.
Was it in that stretch?
I don't know what stretch you're talking about. I
It was
mean,
not. There was a Saints game in between that, and there was one more game. I'm trying to think of
back half of the year.
Broncos too. But okay, whatever. The stretch that everyone's talking about is those 4 guys, just Jefferson twice. So those are fantastic receivers, some of the best in the league. And I don't think that's really something that we can put too much credit into. If you can stop everybody else, especially when these teams have Godwin, and other great receivers, Cooper Kupp. If you're going to be able to stop their wide receiver too, who's also one of the better receivers in the league, you're going to be in an all right spot. Tampa Bay ran the ball okay this game, but not good enough to win. They needed to run the ball really, really well to win this game on a tough Lions run defense. They couldn't do that. They passed the ball well in spurts, but overall, the Lions defense showed up. CJ Gardner-Johnson got his second pick since coming back in Week 18. He's been great and a huge addition to this Lions team. This game was 10-10 at half and 17-17 when the fours went up. This was a close game for a lot of it. But the Lions in the second half responded with 3 straight touchdown drives of 64 yards, 75 yards, and 89 yards in a row. And that's what sealed this game for the Lions. There was two drives in particular that made this game a little bit closer than it should have been. The end of the first half when the Lions had to punt the ball to the Bucks with about a minute left, and the Bucks drove 91 yards for a touchdown off a couple big Mike Evans catches. And then late in the game when they had that drive to make it a one touchdown game after the Lions went up two touchdowns. Those two drives, Bucks moved the ball great. Outside of that, the Lions defense played really, really well this game. Ragnow was severely injured. He hurt his ankle and his foot. Continued to stay in the game all game. Kept playing through it. He's one of the toughest dudes in the league. He's gonna play again this week. He's phenomenal, man. I just have so much respect for him. He's one of the cogs that makes this engine of the Detroit Lions go. And I love Frank Ragnow. Jonah Jackson got hurt this game. Lions left guard, former Pro Bowler. That hurts obviously, but this is a team with 53 guys who are all ready to go at any moment in the game. And whenever you need a guy to replace someone on this team, the next guy up is going to go out there and give it everything they got. And they did that this game. Speaking of that 53-man roster, Craig Reynolds' number was called accidentally on that 4th and goal early in the game where the Lions ended up scoring a touchdown on that inside run. Apparently, it was a personnel issue. I don't know how it happened. Craig Reynolds just got out there. I know Monroe said on his pod that he was in motion on that play, and he looked back when he was motioning right and saw Craig Reynolds, and he was like, "What the fuck are we doing here?" And then Craig Reynolds gets the ball, puts it in the end zone. He was ready to go. Shout out him. He's been on this team for a minute now. He's a great guy, and he's just the third running back that can also get it done when he absolutely has to. He had a huge block against the Bucks also earlier in the season on that Amon-Ra run, one of the nastiest blocks of the year. So that was huge. Goff played amazing. No turnovers in the playoffs so far. 5 touchdowns, 0 picks. He's been great. He is the one of, I believe, 10 quarterbacks to take 2 separate teams to a championship game. He's been great. JG has just fully bought in here and found his home as the Lions quarterback after he was written off completely by the LA Rams. Jahmyr Gibbs was great, 114 all-purpose yards. He had a 6 stiff arm on that big 30-yard touchdown in the second half. We'll touch on the Lions-Niners preview here in just a little bit, but I think he's going to be a huge factor in that game as well. Amon-Ra and Laporta, the common suspects here, 17 catches between the two of them this game. They dominated the middle of the field. The Bucks just had no answer for those two. A couple guys that are just really tough to stop when you got an accurate quarterback like JG throwing to them. The Lions sent pressure all game, which threw off Dave Canales, now Panthers head coach, former Buccaneers OC. I don't think he was expecting AG to throw that much pressure at him, and he did all game long. They actually, I believe, blitzed more than the Bucks did this game. The Bucks are one of the most blitzing teams in the league. They stayed aggressive. They played to their strengths, and they played as well as they could have on defense, which is what they've been doing for the past 5 weeks or so. When the game mattered the most, Derek Barnes gets his first career interception to seal it on the last drive of the game when the Bucks had a chance to go down and tie it down 8. That was huge. Lions Ford Field was ecstatic after that. They ended up breaking the record that they set for themselves last week in the Rams game, and they passed the Saints, who were ahead of them by a couple or by a decibel. They are now third behind Arrowhead and Lumen Field. This Lions team, though, is just truly special. They move as one 53-player unit, and it's a tough train to stop, and I don't think it's stopping anytime soon.
The reason that train is not stopping anytime soon is because all these guys, they're buying into the system and the culture that they have. Guys like Jared Goff, I've been around St. Brown, Jameson Williams, who's been here for a couple years, Craig Reynolds, like you mentioned, he's been here a while. But then also the young guys like Jahmyr Gibbs, Laporta, who've only been in the league for 1 year, Monty, whose first year in Detroit is this season. They've all bought into this offensive system that they run, and I mean, whether it's a personnel issue or not, the fact that Reynolds is able to confidently go in and score, I mean, that just shows how comfortable they are. The Bucks, they put up a good fight. It was actually a really solid game going into the fourth quarter, and Mike Evans did not want them to go quietly. Even with a couple miscues early on, whether it was Baker Mayfield missing a couple throws or Evans just not concentrating at 100%, not locked in, he still finished with 8 catches, 147 yards, and a touchdown. This was as wide receiver one of a game as you can have in the playoffs. Sure, the Lions have had a tough time guarding these wide receiver ones in this recent stretch, but they're wide receiver ones for a reason. So it's hard to stop these guys. They're getting paid the big bucks for a reason. and it's impressive. Now we can officially say that the Baker Mayfield magic has come to an end. He's lost his OC. They have officially lost in the playoffs. Sure, they can come back next year and maybe do a little something something because this division, as we know, is a little on the weaker side. But regardless, Baker Magic is officially over. They are now in Cancun. But congrats to the Lions. Their team has just been very, very impressive for me this year. I figured they'd be a really good team come playoff time because they could score, but they're getting some important stops too. And some of the defensive players are making some crazy good plays. CD Deuce, Gardner Johnson, he's been really good back there in the secondary, especially this soon after recovering from that injury that he suffered, I believe, in week 2, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
But this Lions team, we said at the beginning of the year they weren't healthy for a little while. So, but seeing everybody healthy for the most part, aside from who's the corner that got hurt, who came back and then got hurt, like
Emmanuel Mosley.
Mosley, right?
Should be his revenge game next week.
It should be his revenge game next week. But regardless, this Lions team, they are a very, very fast moving train. But San Francisco, when they're hot, they are also a very, very powerful engine as well. So this is going to be a I said it already, this is going to be a great championship weekend. I think any of the 4 possible Super Bowl combinations will be very entertaining to watch. And if I'm not mistaken, I'll get into it later, but if I'm not mistaken, there are like revenge factors in every single one of the games as well.
Yeah, this was a great game. Jared Goff has the Lions in the NFC Championship for the first time in 32 years. Lions 14-5, won 2 playoff games in a season for the first time since 1957. And that was the last time they won the NFL title. So they also had 2 postseason games at home for the first time. So happy for the city of Detroit. They deserve it. Their teams have been rough for a couple years now. Goff was great in this game, 30 for 43, 287 yards. They were just phenomenal in the second half, especially. They had long touchdown drives on 3 consecutive possessions there. Amon-Ra again continues to show how great he is. 8 catches, 77 yards, and a touchdown was the finishing of a nice, I think it was like 10-play, 90-yard drive. Their offense took over in the second half, won them the game. Jahmyr Gibbs was great in this game. We talked about in the preview how they had not faced Jahmyr Gibbs in the regular season, and here you are for the first time he sees him in the playoffs, and he tore him up. 74 rushing yards on 9 carries, 4 receptions for 40 yards. Lions offense did everything they could to win this game, and they deserved to win this game. Buccaneers, they played solid in this game. Baker Mayfield played well. He had that interception early to CJ Gardner Johnson. Was a little high, but Mike Evans still should have caught it. But CJ Gardner Johnson got to give him the ball back for his interception, so that was funny.
That was so cool.
Yeah. Interesting though. There was really no reason to start all the talk, but I respect it.
He's a talker. He's gonna start it no matter what.
Mayfield did play very well in this. Well, he played solid, 26 for 41, had 349 passing yards. Teams do that against the Lions. It just happens. A lot of passing yards, but they didn't get the win, so it really is all empty. Mike Evans, like you guys said, was pretty good, 147 yards and a touchdown. For the Buccaneers, really, in the season as a whole, kind of like the Packers, how I said, they don't really have much to hang their head on. They exceeded expectations. Hopefully the loss of Dave Canales doesn't hurt them too much. It's definitely going to hurt them. He's been great for them all season. But for the Lions, they get to keep their season going, a chance to go to the Super Bowl, and it's all you could ask for. And they got a chance to do something special.
Yep. Moving on here to the last divisional round game, Chiefs and Bills. This game was as good as advertised. It was a great game. We had honestly, outside of the Ravens game, we had a pretty solid divisional weekend. The Lions did take control of that game in the second half, but for most of the game, it was pretty close. The only turnover in this Bills Chiefs game, was the Mecole Hardman fumble at the goal line. That could have been very, very crucial to eliminating the Chiefs had they not been able to go get a stop on defense and force a field goal, which was tough for Bass. I'll get to that in a second here. But both these quarterbacks played really well for most of the game. Neither one of them made too many mistakes. They were both just trying to do whatever they could to will their offenses to win this game. The only drive Kansas City had where they didn't score was that Mecole Hardman fumble, and then the punt on their last possession to give the Bills a chance to go down and tie it or win it. So that offense did what they had to do against the Bills defense that was playing pretty solid. They got Rasul Douglas back, and the Chiefs still did Chiefs things. It's very, very easy to blame Tyler Bass for this loss. But so many plays happened before that. I don't think you can go out there and say he's the sole reason they lost this game. But if you put the game on your kicker at the end of the game, you're susceptible to this happening, especially in January, an environment where it's hard to kick in. If you go and put it in your kicker's hands, you have to accept your fate if he can't knock it down. KC defense played really, really well all game, as well as they could have against obviously a great offense in the Bills. They didn't allow a point in this game for the final 18 minutes. When it mattered the most, their defense stepped up. They were able to get stops and force field goals that obviously did not go in for the Bills. Outside of that missed kick, the most talked about play this game is going to be the Damar Hamlin fake punt, which allegedly was a call by DeMar after the line of scrimmage. I'm not
That's
sure
crazy.
if that's actually true.
I don't believe that. That can't
That
be
that's what the
That's
streets are
wild.
saying though.
Ain't no
I don't
way he
know.
just said this is my career. Like, ain't no
Yeah, I don't know.
way.
I mean, apparently it's his check at the line if he sees a look he likes in that
Wow.
scenario, and he obviously saw a look he liked. I think in the event he converts that, regardless of the outcome of this game, I think he definitely is no doubt comeback player of the year. He'll
He was
probably,
trying so hard to
yeah,
win that.
he just needed to do one thing all season to win it. He just needed one successful play, and couldn't happen. Luckily for the Bills, Hardman did fumble on the goal line following that punt, fake punt, which would have if the Chiefs would have scored there, it would have probably been over earlier than it was in this game. But they did get that stop. Luckily for the Bills, they kept themselves in the game. Looking at this game, the Chiefs I think are just the better team overall. Josh Allen just cannot beat the Patriots in the play or Patriots cannot beat Kansas City. I had Pat written down, and I think I just read Patriots, but he cannot beat Mahomes in the playoffs. He cannot beat the Chiefs in the playoffs. The regular season wins matter less and less when you consistently produce the same results year in and year out. Maybe at some point in his career, Manning will beat Brady, but at this point, Brady has been dominant in this rivalry.
I completely agree. But one play that I do want to go back on and kind of revisit is that I believe it was 2nd and 9 on that final drive, 2 plays before the missed kick. Josh Allen dropping back in the pocket. I think everyone could see on screen that Diggs was coming underneath. He had probably 5, 6, maybe 10 yards of room in front of him just to get the easy first down. But Josh Allen decided to throw in between the safeties to Shakir and just looked like he missed. But on the replay, I think we all saw that Chris Jones, being one of the best defensive players just on the planet, really impacted that throw and just walked Deion Dawkins back into Josh Allen's lap. That just goes to show you that you need incredible playmakers on both sides of the ball just to make shit happen. I don't fault Josh Allen for going for that play, for going for that touchdown whatsoever. That's who Josh Allen is. He's a big game hunter. He has been for a majority of his career, and I think he still takes that shot 100 out of 100 times, and I would as well. It was open. It just great play by someone on the defensive line, something that he really can't control. And on the other side of it, Diggs, he was having a really, really rough back half of the year. I think he only had like one game over 100 yards, found the end zone maybe twice in the last like 10 weeks. Like, that's still being generous, I guess, but he was very, very piss poor the back half of the year. I know you were tweeting about it, Mike, saying he was washed in a little bit, but I think maybe a change of scenery might help him a little bit. But something does need to be said about the Bills' cap situation this year. This is the year that Josh Allen's new extension kind of gets thrown into play. They are now 46 and change $1 million in the red. So a big receiver contract like Stephon Diggs, maybe pass rushing contracts like Von Miller, where he barely played hardly at all this year just because he's been fighting injuries. Maybe he's on the move or just a cap casualty. Maybe because they've got 3 solid corners like Trey White, Rasul Douglas, and Teron Johnson. Maybe one of them gets the boot because they don't want to pay all 3 of them. One of their 2 great safeties, Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. I mean, maybe one of those 2 is gone. They've got a lot of financial maneuvering to do this offseason, and I'm very interested to see how they go forward with it, because if they don't fix things fast and they continue to force Josh Allen to be the hero and they don't get enough talent around him, or they just continue to face unfortunate injuries like they have all year, they're not going to reclaim that Super Bowl window. And I do think that window is closing. But on the winning side, Kansas City, they played a really good game defensively, youngest defense in the league. They got stops when they needed to. Sure, maybe it was a DeMar Hamlin audible at the line of scrimmage that might have won them the game, but regardless, they got the job done. Isaiah Pacheco was great as he normally is when he gets a good chunk of carries. Mahomes, he was efficient. He was taking the smart throws. He wasn't forcing anything in a double or triple coverage. Him and Kelsey seemed like they were actually on today. They didn't connect a bunch, but 5 times for 75 yards and 2 scores. That seems pretty prime Mahomes and Kelsey to me. And I was telling my roommate about this maybe a couple hours ago before he left. I think I'm ready to claim Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid one of, if not the greatest quarterback coach duos of all time, strictly because of how well they mesh together in terms of play style, play calling, all that. And obviously, the first argument would be, what about Brady and Belichick? They had 6 rings, and I could counter with, well, Belichick was more defensive minded, and Brady was Brady, one of the smartest football players of all time, and it was him and ironically Josh McDaniels who made a lot of that offense work. So I I feel confident to plant my flag in the Mahomes and Andy Reid are the greatest quarterback coach duo of all time. Comment, debate me if you will. I will happily respond to anybody. Maybe not. I don't know if I see it, but I that's my takeaway. One of my takeaways from this game. But Chiefs are going to have to run the ball really well next week if they want to have success like they did this week, and Mahomes is just going to have to be really Mahomey too.
Yeah. Until they get 4, I don't think they're the GOAT combo, but
That's fair.
I can see where you're coming from. But great game. That's what I said I wanted going into this game. I wanted a great game, and it really was. Neither team led by more than 7 points, 5 lead changes. Great game. Mahomes finally, well, it was his first playoff game on the road, but he gets his first road playoff win. Chiefs are just used to ending the Bill season at this point now. They've done it 3 of the last 4 playoffs. Chiefs offense, we talked about it almost all year, how they were struggling. They couldn't find their groove. They weren't looking like the Chiefs we had seen in the past, and they've come out in the playoffs and they've just like with the snap of a finger turned it around. Chiefs scored on 5 of their first 6 possessions, not including the kneel down to end the half. They were the Bills defense has been incredible at home all season, and they really just moved down the field at will. Mahomes was 17 of 23, 215 yards, 2 touchdown passes to Travis Kelce, of course. 15th and 16th time they've done that in the playoffs. They now have one more touchdown than Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski for the NFL record for most playoff touchdowns by a quarterback receiver connection. They just turn it up in the playoffs. Josh Allen was also great on the other side of the football. He continues to lose these matchups in the playoffs, but he always puts out a good performance. 26 for 39, 186 yards and a touchdown passing. He had 2 rushing touchdowns and a team high 72 yards rushing, which makes his career playoff total to 563 rushing yards, which is the second most among NFL quarterbacks in league history, behind only Steve Young, who had 594. So we'll probably see him pass that soon. And maybe if Lamar makes a run this year, he'll be up there too. So he had that great throw to Diggs, like you touched on, Zach, that he just wasn't able to complete the catch. The Diggs and Allen connection really has been down during the stretch this season. And I did tweet out saying maybe he's washed. I don't know. I think he should definitely be on the washed watch list next season, considering how rough he was down the stretch. He had 82 targets, 505 yards, and 2 touchdowns since week 8, 0 100-yard games. Khalil Shakir had 36 targets, 536 yards, and 1 touchdown, and I think 2 100-yard games. So, with half the targets, Khalil Shakir outperformed him down the stretch this year. They need to, for their offseason, I really think they need to find consistent receiving weapons for him. It seems like Kincaid will be a guy, Shakir. But with Diggs getting older, maybe it'll help with cap space. Maybe you have to move on this season. You're already losing Gabe Davis in the offseason, most likely. So for the Chiefs, I think Josh, you said it. Jack, he's been on the pod before. Raiders fan. They're this Chiefs team is almost kind of like the Patriots dynasty where they can struggle all season, maybe not look like a team at all. You think maybe it's over, and then the playoffs start and they just dominate and figure it out. And they're in their sixth consecutive AFC championship. So nice for the Chiefs.
Kind of to go back to your point about the washed watch list, who else is on that list? Obviously, Diggs, probably Austin Eckler, especially after
Oh, I
this
think
He's
he's
not.
whole.
He's not
already
even on the
washed.
watch list. He's just washed.
You think he's just straight up washed?
Yeah,
Who else
for
do we
sure.
think is on it though?
I don't want to put Devontae Adams on it considering the
Oh,
quarterback
whoa, whoa,
situation,
whoa,
but
whoa, whoa. We
I mean, he
definitely
didn't have the
can't.
greatest season.
Like, I think 2 or 3 games ago, he had like 12 or 13 catches for like 160 something yards and a score or two, didn't he?
I mean, he didn't play 2 weeks ago, but overall,
2 games ago.
yeah, there's a couple of guys who could be on there.
Yeah, I don't know.
I can't think of
I'd
any
have
off the
to
top of
think
my
off the top
head.
of my head. Yeah, but yeah, there's definitely some names there. But
Matt
we could
Ryan last year.
yeah, Carson Wentz. But we could do some studs and duds here really quickly before we move
Cam
on
Newton.
into the championship round recap. Apparently, he wants to go to the Falcons now. I don't know. Um, but moving on to studs and duds.
Zach
Uh,
Ertz.
I will be. I will quickly go with mine. My stud. Can't believe I'm saying this. I know early in the season I definitely wouldn't believe I'm saying this, but I'm gonna go with Aaron Glenn, AG. He dialed up blitzing for most of this game, setting a ton of pressure at Baker Mayfield. The concern this game is that they were going to be able to dominate on the intermediate and deep routes all game. If you can attack him when he's not expecting to be attacked and he has to get the ball out early, throw short, you can limit as much as you can, put as least amount of pressure on the guys like Cam Sutton and Kendall Vidlor to guard Mike Evans and Chris Godwin deep and intermediate. He did that. That was a genius play by him. So he is my stud for the week. And my dud is Jordan Love for those 2 picks in the Niners game, especially that last pick. If he doesn't throw that last pick, the Packers either go to overtime or win this game against the Niners. So he, as good as he had been in this back half of the season, and as good as he was overall in that game, those 2 picks were just backbreaking for the Green Bay Packers and lost in the game straight up.
All right. Well, my stud of the week, I was kind of debating back and forth between this guy and another guy, but I'm going to go with Mike Evans, 8 catches for 147 yards and a touchdown. He's been phenomenal all year and probably the best player on the Bucs roster the entire season. He was tied for the league lead in touchdowns with Tyreek Hill, who has been phenomenal the last few years. And he probably could have gone for over 200 yards if it weren't for him dropping a pass or two and Baker missing him a couple times. So, and my dud of the week, same team, same game. Todd Bowles going into the locker room with a timeout in the back pocket. I mean, it's a Hail Mary for sure to call timeout and just see if you can get something lucky, but it's the playoffs. Like, why not? So went to the locker room with an extra timeout. That is my personal dud of the week. Just
The
lack of
there's kind
situational
of
awareness.
there's a misconception in that whole scenario that people aren't talking about. The Lions were not kneeling it for early for no reason. Like they knew he had a timeout. There was a common agreement between Bowles and Dan Campbell, who are great friends, that he wasn't going to call that timeout with them kneeling early. It would have been a scumbag move to do. I wouldn't have blamed him for doing it. I mean, it's the playoffs. But at the end of the day, if he would have called the timeout, the Lions wouldn't be kneeling it with 17 seconds left on the play clock. They would have had less than 10 seconds, needed a punt return, needed a miracle. I I don't think it. Everybody's like blaming Todd Bowles for it. It's not like the Lions, if he took the timeout, we're gonna just give them a minute on the clock left. Like that was never
Oh,
gonna
I know
happen.
it. I know it's not like a comeback attempt. It's more like just like I said, a Hail Mary. It
Yeah,
would be. I mean it's the playoffs. I feel like you throw everything at the wall and see if something sticks.
yeah,
So regardless of your little unspoken agreement, like come on, it's the playoffs. If you really care, let's call that timeout and just get lucky or something.
Yeah, for my stud of the week, Lamar Jackson's my stud. He had been doubted going into the playoffs. He was 1-3 going into the playoffs, and he came out and had great performance, 100 yards rushing, 100 yards passing, 2 touchdown runs, 2 touchdown passes. He was phenomenal. Honorable mention, Kayshon Boutte, uh, over 8,900 bets in just over 13 months. That averages out to about 1 bet per hour without sleeping. So That's some impressive numbers right there. Um, and my dud of the week, specifically Anders Carlson and Tyler Bass, both kickers. Anders Carlson, he'd sucked all season, really. Needed to hit the kick to give his team a 7-point lead, and he shanked it. And Tyler Bass needed to hit that kick to tie the game, and he shanked it. Honorable mention to Keishon Butte. I think he lost about like $170,000 betting on himself.
Yeah, it's just crazy. Me personally, that wouldn't happen, but we can move on now to the NFC and AFC championship games for championship weekend. First game here, Chiefs at Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens are 4-point favorites in this game. The over-under is 45.5. The Chiefs have a major experience advantage here. Uh, Mahomes is in his sixth straight AFC title game in his 6 year starting, which is just an absolutely insane stat. It shows his greatness to the highest degree, outside of his obvious two Super Bowls, and going for a third this season. I think the Ravens are going to struggle to pass the ball in this game. They have the 21st pass offense still, and the Chiefs have the fourth pass defense in the league. I think they're going to have to heavily rely on the run here. They are far and away the best rushing team in the league. As we've said, they average 19 rushing yards more per game than the second highest team in the league this year. Kansas City did a good job, though, limiting Cook and the Buffalo run offense. Last week, Buffalo's fifth in the league in run offense. And I think if they can do even a fraction of what they did against the Bills, they'll be in a decent spot this week, especially being able to defend the pass. KC is going to have to run the ball efficiently here. As good as a passing team as they are, and they have been in Mahomes' tenure, running the ball is going to be huge here for them on the Ravens, as the Ravens' strength on defense is also in the pass game. I think this is going to come down to which team makes the first mistake, especially turnover wise. I think we have a scenario here where Lamar could start to maybe throw a pick or two this game because this defense is no joke. Bolton's been playing fantastic. Snead, as you said, has been playing fantastic. Chris Jones, of course. Um, I'm going to continue to ride with the experience over the flash and the recency bias, as I did last week, and I'm gonna pick the Kansas City Chiefs to go to their second Super Bowl in a row.
I personally have no what's the word I'm looking for? No horse in this race of who I really want to see win this game. Same thing as Kansas City and Buffalo last week. I just want to see a really good football game, something coming down to the fourth quarter, last drive or two. Maybe whoever has the ball last. I think that'll be really interesting. But you mentioned it a little bit, Josh. One thing I'm going to be watching in this game is how Kansas City reacts to Baltimore's rushing game, but more importantly, Lamar as a rusher. I am very, very curious to see what they do to stop him, whether they spy Bolton a lot more or they just send a lot of pressure and force Lamar to throw the ball rather than giving him time to just sit in the pocket, read that nothing's open, and then take off and just beat someone one-on-one in space. So I expect Kansas City, or I would hope that Kansas City blitzes a lot to try and neutralize that. But as good as Lamar is, you can't really stop him. You can only hope to contain him. And same thing goes for Patrick Mahomes as well. You mentioned, or I mentioned it earlier. I think Kansas City has one of, if not the greatest head coaching and quarterback duos of all time. I expect that to be on full display. But Mahomes is not perfect, and in order to make up for that, they're gonna have to run the ball well, also. So Pacheco, I hope he gets 20-ish carries, maybe 20 total touches in general. And Mahomes, he just doesn't have to do too much in order to succeed. I am going with Baltimore. I like their roster a little bit better. I like their offensive personnel, especially if they get Mark Andrews back for this game. Lamar said it himself, getting Mark Andrews back, he'd be getting his bread and butter back. So I think having that nice tight end duo of Likely and Andrews is going to be huge for them. Uh, I don't think Kansas City has the linebacker personnel to match with that. They do have Bolton, but he's really the best athlete they have at that spot, so they might spy him on Lamar. But if they don't do that, then they're going to have to throw him on one of Andrews or Likely if they decide to go 12 personnel. So I'm very intrigued to see how Kansas City is going to handle Baltimore's offense. And I don't think they have enough talent to do it. So I'm going with Baltimore here.
Yeah, Lamar Jackson, please save us. Lamar Jackson versus Patrick Mahomes to go to the Super Bowl. It doesn't get much better than that. Two of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. But really, it's a battle of two elite defenses. Ravens defense gave up the fewest points in the NFL this year at 16.5 points per game, and they also led the NFL in sacks with 60. The Chiefs ranked second in both of those categories, so two of the top defenses in football. We saw last week the Ravens defense giving up 0 touchdowns to CJ Stroud's offense. And they're gonna have to get pressure on Mahomes in this game if they want to win. They got no sacks on Stroud last week. They're going to need to get some on Mahomes. Mahomes has been sacked 0 times so far in the postseason. He's been able to evade sacks, stay on his feet. There were 4 games this season where Mahomes was sacked at least 3 times. The Chiefs went 1-3 in those games. Um, the Ravens have 3 players who have recorded at least 9 sacks and 7 players who have recorded at least 3. They spread the wealth. They're going to have to do it. They're just going to have to get to Mahomes no matter what. That's going to be one of the main things to watch. Chiefs, they offense struggled in the regular season. Here in the postseason, their offense has been phenomenal. They're averaging more points per game and more yards per play than they did during the regular season. One of the big reasons is obviously Travis Kelce seemed to turn it around. Over the final 3 games of the year, he was averaging just 29 yards per game, 0 touchdowns. And since the playoffs started, we've seen the Kelce of normal, 73 yards per game with 2 touchdowns. So he's been phenomenal. One of the best teams against the tight end defensively, though, has been the Ravens. They only gave up 3 touchdown catches all year to tight ends, which was tied for the second lowest numbers. I got the Ravens winning this game. I think they have the recipe to kind of beat the Chiefs. They have a great defense. They can get pressure on the quarterback, and they can slow down the tight end, which is going to hurt the Chiefs' offense. Chiefs are going to need to find a way to win at the offensive line. Find a way to get the ball to Kelce. If they can't, Rashee Rice is going to have a big game, or Isaiah Pacheco, like you said, Zach. So I think the Ravens win this game. I like their defense more, and I think it's Lamar Jackson's turn to have a crack at it and host the Lombardi.
All right, moving on here then to the NFC Championship, Lions at 49ers. The 49ers are 7-point favorites in this game. The over-under is 51.5. The Lions have one game to go punch their ticket to the Super Bowl in Vegas. Um, 2 more to go win the whole thing. The 49ers run defense and offense struggled versus Green Bay. As I said, those were strengths for them this season overall, and they were weaknesses against Green Bay. And those are 2 of the Lions' biggest strengths overall. No Debo, he's is a possibility. I know he's 50-50 right now. As he said, I don't think he's practiced yet this week as we speak on Thursday. That could be real trouble for the 49ers if he doesn't play. This is a completely different team without Debo, and I think it significantly impacts them. I actually think if Debo gets ruled out, the spread moves maybe towards 5.5, 5 if he does get ruled out. So I'm assuming Vegas is expecting him to play. I'm expecting him to play. It is the NFC title game overall, but it depends on how hurt he is. And if he's playing and he's beat up, I mean, he came out of the game for 2 separate injuries last week, head and shoulder. So if he is playing, who knows if he's going to be able to stay healthy for the entire game. But the Lions were 6-3 on the road this season, should have been 7-2. Shout out Brad Allen again. Jahmyr Gibbs is 5th in yards per game outside the tackles, 4th before contact outside the tackles, and 3rd in 10-plus yard rushes outside the tackles. The 49ers are 28th, 29th, and 24th in those stats, respectively. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to have a big game this game. I think he's going to rush for a ton of yards. I think he's going to receive for a ton of yards. He will probably be the X factor if the Lions can pull this game out. Concern for the Lions would be getting torn up in the pass game as they have all season. I think Aaron Glenn is going to stay aggressive as he did in the Tampa Bay game against this mid-O line. I think if the Lions can get some pass rush, get to Purdy early, he's nowhere near as good when he's under pressure. If they can get to him, force him to throw short, not those big in routes to Kittle or Ayuk, I think that's going to be a possible area of success for the Lions. San Francisco is a middle of the pack pass defense. I think we're going to have a high volume pass game in general in this game. I think we're going to see a lot of points, a lot of pass yards between both of these teams. The Niners are very, very good in between the numbers on defense, which is where the Lions have thrived all season with Amon Ra and Sam Laporta and Josh Reynolds. So that's going to be the true battle in this game. What's going to win? Are the Niners going to be able to stop the Lions between the numbers, or are the Lions going to be able to still throw it between the numbers as they have all season against a really good defense whose strength is relying on those linebackers to go make plays in the middle of the field? Um, I do not think there's a sports team in the country that is as hungry as the Lions are right now. I think they're playing for something that is just so much bigger than any other team is playing for right now. I think they're playing for the whole city. I think they're playing for the reputation of the city and of this organization that they've had for so long of just being bottom of the barrel. They run as Dan Campbell does, and I just think that although the Niners have so many great individual players, I just think the Lions are just together as one unit. And I think that's just so hard to stop unless you can really dial up a great game plan to beat them. And of course, Kyle Shanahan can. I know you guys are going to pick the Niners. You guys both picked the Ravens, and I picked the Chiefs earlier in this pod. I may be a homer sometimes. I'm not a homer here, but right now I genuinely believe the Lions are going to go into San Francisco and beat the 49ers and go to the Super Bowl to set up for a week 1 rematch with Kansas City. Both teams fully healthy. And as much as I want to say that I am just picking them because it's hope, I genuinely in my heart do think the Lions are going to go win this game.
All right. So maybe me like 2 or 3 months ago would have said that the Lions have no chance in this game. They don't have the talent that San Francisco has offensively and defensively at the skill positions. And I would be writing them off like Geno Smith was written off all those years ago. But Detroit is, like you said, Josh, they are fighting for something bigger than themselves. They're fighting for not just a city, but a fan base that expands more than just a singular city on a map. They're fighting for respect, culture, and all that good shit. Me personally, you mentioned one of my X factors of this game, Jahmyr Gibbs. I think the other one is clear and obvious to Deebo Samuel. It's definitely going to be whether he plays it or not. I think he will dress regardless, but they might just use him sparingly because obviously if they want to win, they're going to have to use him. But if they don't want to overuse him because they don't want to knock him out for a potential Super Bowl game. So I
I hope
do
they're
think
thinking ahead like that. I hope they are.
I do think San Francisco, top to bottom, has a better roster on paper. They have the better team. They are just very, very good. They've got, I think you can argue, one of the 5 best running backs we've ever seen in NFL history in Christian McCaffrey in terms of skill set. And they've also got an insane group of weapons. They've got Mr. Irrelevant fighting for something that he lost last year. Maybe it was his UCL. Maybe it was a chance at a Super Bowl, whatever. They're fighting for pride there as well. Both teams got something to fight for. I think San Francisco has the edge on paper, but Detroit has it in terms of emotion, support, just grit. I'm sure you'll like that, Josh. But you said I would pick San Francisco in this one, right, Josh?
I did.
No,
Well,
don't do this.
I did hint at me mentioning later in this episode of all 4 potential Super Bowl matchups will have some sort of revenge factor. Chiefs Niners, it is going to be a rematch of Mahomes' first Super Bowl in which the Niners choked in the fourth quarter. Playoff Damian came in, scored that touchdown to put them ahead by 11, all that. Baltimore and San Francisco, San Fran's going to want some revenge on the, what's it called, from earlier this season. Detroit and Baltimore, it's going to be revenge from Baltimore walloping on Detroit earlier this year. And then, like you said, Josh, Detroit and Kansas City. We're bookending the season the way that it started, Chiefs and Lions. But the Chiefs have something to fight for as well because they now have Kelsey and Chris Jones compared to week 1. I think the Super Bowl matchup will be the Detroit Lions and the Baltimore Ravens.
Talk to
I
me.
think
Talk to me.
No, this is bad.
No,
I
I'm with
think-
it, bro.
I'm with it.
I think the Lions will pull off the upset. It's going to be close, but I'm not going to root for it. But I do think Detroit, it's just maybe a little bit of manifest destiny, their God-given right to play in this damn Super Bowl, playing for their city. I was down in Vegas a couple weeks ago. Allegiant Stadium, it's a hockey puck from high up. I'm going to be honest, but It is going to be a game of football that is played, and it will be one for the ages. I believe it will be the Lions and Ravens, the written off Jared Goff. Ooh, that's a bar. And the forever underrated running back, Lamar Jackson, fighting for each of their first Lombardis. It's going to be a heck of a show. Detroit is my pick this weekend.
Before you get into what you got to say, Mike, I know what you're leaning at. I through this playoff run so far, we saw game 1. Everybody went with the Rams. No one wanted to pick the Lions. Everyone wrote them off. The Lions showed everybody wrong. This past week, everyone picked the Lions against Tampa Bay. It's are they gonna give a letdown, let Tampa Bay win this game? Lions won that game. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what I say. It doesn't matter what you two say. It doesn't matter what anybody in the media says. It's the Lions and the 49ers, and it's the football teams that they put on the field, and that's all that's gonna matter.
You're not superstitious then, no?
Oh, I'm superstitious, but when it comes to the media picks, that doesn't mean nothing to me.
See, I'm really superstitious, so I think our picks here actually influence the game, and in my opinion, and Honk just ruined all my superstitions. But
if the Lions lose this game, I'm not gonna come on here next week and be like,
I am.
Zach should
Blame
have
us.
picked the
I'm
Niners. Like,
blaming
I'm not
us
gonna
all.
do that.
For the first time since 1991, the Lions are in the NFC Championship game. George H.W. Bush was still the president. None of us on this podcast were born. It's been a long time. Lions, they surrendered 247.9 passing yards per game during the regular season, 6th worst number in the NFL. In the playoffs, that hasn't gotten better for them. If not, it's gotten worse. 367 yards to Matt Stafford, 349 yards to Baker Mayfield, both very large totals. They're going to have to be better, keep Purdy as far away from those numbers as possible, and force him into a turnover. 2-4 in games where Brock Purdy throws at least one pick, 11-0 when he doesn't throw any interceptions. So they have to force him into turnovers. The Lions, their run defense has been phenomenal all season. They've allowed the second fewest rushing yards in the league. They need to slow down Christian McCaffrey, maybe the best running back in the NFL. Deebo Samuel obviously is questionable, and they are 0-2 when he doesn't start the season. So there's a lot of things going on with their offense. They have to force them to turnovers, slow down McCaffrey, and hopefully Deebo doesn't play. 49ers defense is very good. 3rd fewest points in the league this year, 8th fewest yards. Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery both need to have a big day if they want a chance to win this one, I think. Each of them have had one really big game in the playoffs last week. Jahmyr Gibbs, the week before David Montgomery. They might both need to have one here. Including them, their offensive line needs to be big. Penei Sewell, Frank Ragnow, Taylor Decker, Graham Glasnow, Jonah Jackson. I don't think he's playing, so I don't know who you guys got at left
We have
guard.
a couple options. I think we're gonna go with the Wookiee though.
Yeah. The reason I say that is they're going to be tasked with opening up the run game and keeping Jared Goff in a clean pocket. 49ers defense is good. Like I said, Jared Goff in a clean pocket this year ranks 4th in completion, 9th in yards per attempt, 4th in touchdowns. Under pressure, those numbers drop to 14th in completion percentage, 13th in yards per attempt, and 14th in touchdowns. Got to keep him with a clean pocket. Got to limit the turnovers. Lions are 4-4 when he throws at least one pick, 10-1 when he doesn't. I think whichever team wins the turnover battle is going to win the game. I was going to go with the Detroit Lions, but Zach picking the 49ers just throws me off because then I wanted us all to have different picks this week. And if I pick the Lions now, Zach and I have the same pick, regardless. But
Hey, we're making picks. We're not creating narratives here.
I'm not creating a narrative. I just wanted us all to be different for 1 week. Before I make my pick, last thing, I think I saw Brad Holmes win Executive of the Year, so shout out to him.
Well deserved.
I'm gonna go with the Detroit Lions.
Town,
Yeah, I mean, this is embarrassing for you, Josh, considering 10 minutes ago you said that none of us were gonna pick the Lions, and now here we are.
I really didn't think you would.
Yeah,
If
I'll
I had
pick
to
the
pick
Lions,
which one
but-
of you two did, I would have said you. I wouldn't have said Zach.
Yeah, no, he switched up on. Remember, he wasn't with you at the start, though. Remember that.
Hey,
wasn't with you at the
what Dan
start.
Campbell say?
Yeah, exactly.
Come on now.
I think I've made my thoughts very justifiable for why I picked the Rams, but
Jumping on the train a little late.
I'm not
Well,
jumping on any train. I'm just picking who I think is going to win.
I think it's gonna be a dogfight regardless of what happens. If the Niners knock us down, we're gonna get back up. We're gonna bite a kneecap off.
And play some gritty damn football.
Then if they knock us down again,
Mm.
we're gonna get back up one more time, and we're gonna take another chunk out of you.
Mm.
And at the end, we're gonna be the last one standing. So be
Mm.
ready for it. Detroit's going to the Super Bowl, baby. Let's get it.
That's what I like to hear.
That's all I got. That we got some bet. Want to do some betting picks?
Ravens Lions Super Bowl is.
I'm hoping for Chiefs Lions. That's matchup wise though. I mean, I think the Lions match up better with the Chiefs. But at the end of the day, it's also the Chiefs have been to so many Super Bowls. It's like, ugh. But the Chiefs lost to the Niners in the Super Bowl, and if the Lions do make it, they will have beaten
If the
Niners.
Lions make the Super Bowl and it's Lions Chiefs and you're watching the game and all of the media coverage is on Taylor Swift, you're not going to be a little upset?
Dude, take the media coverage off of the Lions. That's honestly, I think that's a better scenario. I think if it's Ravens Lions, I think the media coverage will skew Lions. If it's on Taylor Swift and it's on the Chiefs and it's on Mahomes winning his third ring, take all the pressure off of the Lions. Let them go in there and play ball. That's all that matters, though. None of this. I mean, I'm a superstitious guy. Like you said, I'm gonna have my same rituals I'm gonna do on game day that I've been doing the past few weeks here, and that's just a personal thing. But all this media, everything, none of the noise matters. At the end of the day, we're playing football. It's going to be whatever team goes and scores more points, whatever team goes and gets more stops, that's going to be the team that wins the game. And in my heart and in my head, I truly believe that's going to be the Detroit Lions.
I personally am not superstitious, but I am a little stitious. Josh, could you give us a little bit of an insight on what some of your little rituals are on game day?
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of what we've been doing the past couple weeks here. My roommate has gone to the local Meijer and gotten a Detroit style pizza and eaten that. I believe he eats it in the beginning of the game, and then in the second half, he eats like the rest of it. I've been drinking the same specialty mixed drink for the entire game. There have been points in both of the last two games where we muted the TV and just played Drake for a couple quarters. That's what we did in the fourth quarter last game, and we saw what that happened. So there will be a lot of Detroit pizza, Andolinis, and Drake playing on the stereo for this game, and hopefully it ends with how it's been ending the past 2 weeks, which is my boy G-Mac Cash and the Lions won again.
Love to
But
see it.
yeah, that's we'll finish with some betting picks here and then we'll head out. It's been a pretty long pod already for 6 games, but first game Chiefs Ravens. Like I said, I'm going with the Chiefs. My dumbass thought that this line was going to move more towards the Chiefs. I took it as it opened at +3 +102. I believe it's -4 -110 or 105 right now. So it has moved slightly to the Ravens. And then I'm obviously on the Lions money line. I'm also on the Lions +7.
Me personally, I'm taking the Chiefs and Ravens to be under 44.5. I believe it was, I don't know which one of you said it, but you mentioned that they're each number one and number two in terms of like sacks and then just defense in general, I think. But both these defenses are really good. It's going to come down to crucial plays on third downs, maybe even a fourth down if one team gets really ballsy. So I'm taking the under in that game, the under 45.5. And then Lions, Niners, just give me Lions money line. I'm not even going to grace myself with the 7 points. Just give me the money line.
Yeah, for the Ravens game, I'm going to go with Lamar Jackson anytime touchdown +100. I think he's going to run one in. He did it last week. I think he's going to do it again. And then for the 49ers game, I'm going to go Brock Purdy over half an interception. I think he has to throw one if the Lions win, and I think he's going to. I think that was also +100.
Yeah, give me a player. Give me a player that you think's getting that pick. I got one in mind.
You know what? This might sound crazy. I don't know how much he's been playing, but Jack Campbell. I think it's his turn. For
No,
the
he plays. He
rookies.
starts. Yeah,
I think it's his turn.
Man, that would be electric.
I'd say Brian Branch. Just right place, right time.
I'm going
I think
big
it'll-
3-1. I think Curb is due.
Curb?
I think it's
crazy.
due. He in the biggest of moments he shows up. It could be CJ Gardner Johnson too. It could be Iffy. Got a lot of good players on this defense on the back end. A lot of good safeties. So we'll see what
They just give
happens,
up
man.
They just give up a lot of yards.
Yeah, they do give up a lot of yards, but at the end of the day,
Ben
Yards don't
break
win
defense.
games. Yards do
It's
not
true.
win football games. But yeah, I think if the Lions can just keep him out of the end zone for the most part, if they can just play how they did against the Rams, man, that's all that matters. I was just to wrap this up real quick when we were talking about before I got in the Andolini drink the same drink before every game thing. I was gonna do a thing where I just drank like a specialty drink, like a different one for each game, and I was gonna do the Dan Campbell caffeine thing for the last game, which is 1,000 milligrams of caffeine. It's like 2 ventis with like 3 espresso shots or some shit. Wild.
Wild.
But my roommate was like, I don't. What if you have like a heart attack and die in the middle of the game? And I was like, yeah, it's a fair point. Probably shouldn't be doing that. Dan Campbell weighs a little bit more than me, so maybe I shouldn't be doing that. But
Maybe 2 espresso shots and you'll be fine.
yeah, maybe. I'm not gonna need it though. I'll be wide awake. I'll be wide awake. But you said what?
You can try the Will Levis Mayo coffee.
Hell no. Hell no. Hell no. But that about wraps it up for this episode of the Engage 8 podcast. Thank you for listening. As always, our links are in the description for our Spotify, TikTok, and all of our Twitter/X. We will be back sometime next week to recap these games. We don't really know what we're gonna do during Pro Bowl week yet. I mean, we're gonna, I guess, talk about the Pro Bowl a little bit, but we'll probably talk maybe some NBA. We haven't talked NBA on here in like a month plus probably. Maybe some college basketball, which we haven't yet touched on. I know me and Mike are really, really big college basketball fans, so we need to dive into that at some point. And then once football season's over, uh, we're gonna have to scramble from there. I know we're gonna talk some basketball, college and pro. We'll dive into some hockey probably, and then I think we're gonna do some other non-sports media kind of talk, from movies to food and just random things to keep us busy during this long summer of no football. But until next time, we'll see everybody in the next one.